Now, the regulation of this is very, very important. Again, the water balance and the electrolyte balance of cells is crucial for many, many systems that we've already discussed to this point. And I want to talk about the kidneys because the kidneys play a crucial role in maintaining this homeostasis of our bodies. Homeostasis means basically just that things like to remain the way they are. Homeostasis means that things are even, things are balanced, and that's the way that the body likes to be. However, the body is a very dynamic system. We're always moving and we're always consuming and we're always filtering out waste and all these different things. So things are always changing, which means that our body always needs to be working towards that homeostasis. It's actually very uncommon for our bodies to be in that homeostasis because as soon as it gets there, the homeostasis is changed to what it needs to be. So it needs to keep working to get towards that point. Anyways, there's the process, the kidneys and our bodies achieving homeostasis and water and electrolytes. Those are very, very complicated processes. And we don't need to get in, to understand this well. We don't need to understand all of it. What I wanted to discuss with you guys is just the process of water homeostasis and sodium homeostasis. Now, the two main processes by which our kidneys maintain homeostasis within our bodies are that of aldosterone and ADH, which stands for antidiuretic hormone. Let's talk about ADH first. Antidiuretic hormone, if you're familiar, diuretic or diuresis is the process by which our body eliminates water. If you want to purchase or take a diuretic, the diuretic will cause you to pee a lot of your body water. Now, your kidneys are in a constant state of diuresis. They're always filtering out water from your blood, and they're constantly creating urine. They're in a constant mode of diuresis. And so actually what happens in our bodies is that we put out antidiuretic hormone. And when antidiuretic hormone is released into the body, the kidneys slow down. They stop, of course, because it's antidiuretic hormone. Well, they stop their natural process of diuresis. But when antidiuretic hormone is not present, the kidneys are in a natural state of diuresis, eliminating the amount of water. So, for example, if you are very, very well hydrated and you consume a big glass of water, you might have much more water than your body really even needs. And so your kidneys are going to start filtering that out. There's going to be a very, very low amount of antidiuretic hormone, so your kidneys are going to take that water and excrete it. However, if you're very dehydrated, your antidiuretic hormone is going to go up, and you are going to not filter out and not excrete very much water at all. One of the common mechanisms by which antidiuretic hormone is released is actually the blood pressure. Now, if you're familiar with blood pressure, you know that a normal value is about 120/80. If you're not, let me explain it. Now, the blood pressure has two components. Of course, the top number is called your systolic blood pressure, and the bottom is called your diastolic blood pressure. That has to do with the pressure that is exerted on the arteries of the body as the heart contracts and when it is at rest. Now, your systolic number is higher because that is the pressure on the arteries when the heart contracts. The diastolic blood pressure is lower because that is the pressure on the arteries when the heart is at rest. So it's common for the systolic blood pressure to be about 1.5 times the diastolic blood pressure. Again, healthy being 120/80. Now, I actually used to had a misconception in my brain that the blood pressure was like the viscosity of the blood. And that's not the case at all. The viscosity of the blood is a completely separate measure. It really is just the amount of pressure on the arteries. Now, how I want you to think about this is like a water balloon, right? If you have a water balloon and there's not very much water in it, then it's going to be kind of limp. You can stretch it, move it around quite a bit. However, if you fill it up with more and more and more water, you increase the volume, then you increase the pressure. The the outside of the balloon is going to be very much more stiff. It's not very malleable, or else it could pop. There's more pressure, right? So when we're dehydrated, there's less water in that balloon, right? The balloon being our arteries and our human body. So If there's less water, we're dehydrated, the pressure is going to go down. And our kidneys are going to realize that the blood pressure is low, and because of that is going to put out anti-diuretic hormone. Anti-diuretic hormone can also lead to the constriction of blood vessels to maintain and regulate our blood pressure. So when your blood vessels constrict, a water balloon doesn't have that ability, but your blood vessels do. If you only have a certain amount of water in your blood vessels, they can actually constrict to regulate and keep your blood pressure where it needs to be. Now, the other mechanism is that of aldosterone. Now, aldosterone is responsible for the excretion of sodium. And because of that, for most people, you should be able to consume a fair amount of sodium, even if it's more than the sodium that you need, and your blood pressure should remain relatively stable. Now, I'm sure you've heard that sodium is bad for you because it increases your blood pressure, and this is true in an acute sense, because if we consume a lot of sodium, then the amount of water that is in our bodies is actually going to be, our bodies aren't going to necessarily recognize that they need to excrete it, because it's going to be, the electrolyte content of that water is going to be higher than if we just consumed plain water. And so there's more volume inside of the blood vessels, so the pressure goes up. So it's true, in an acute sense, sodium does increase our blood pressure. However, eventually, and especially when the blood pressure is high, our kidneys are going to understand that they need to excrete sodium to maintain our blood pressure to a good level for our body. And aldosterone is going to signal to our kidneys to excrete that salt. So in general, if you overconsume sodium, you should be okay. Now, that is not medical advice. I hope you don't take it as such. If you have high blood pressure and you've consulted with your doctor and your doctor recommends the DASH diet, the dietary approach to stop hypertension, then you should follow that diet. A big part of that is lowering sodium. Now, in fact, lowering your sodium does often reduce your blood pressure, but that doesn't mean that if you have a healthy blood pressure, that consuming more sodium is bad for you. And I want to express that I just want you to understand that. I really, really do, because if you're an athlete, you need sodium. You're losing a lot of sodium through sweat and through exercise, especially if you're an endurance athlete, if you're running a lot, a soccer player, a swimmer. Someone like a baseball player might not lose quite as much, water and sodium through their sweat because they play their game rather intermittently. However, especially if you're in a hot climate, you're losing salt. And as an athlete, if you don't have salt, you're going to have cramps, Charlie horses. Your body, your muscles are not going to work as well as they're supposed to. Your power output is going to be weaker. And that is not something that any of the athletes want. All right, so athletes, again, I'm speaking to you. Do not be afraid of sodium. I want you to understand that even if you did consume more sodium than you should, assuming you're healthy, your aldosterone should signal to your kidneys to excrete that salt, and you should be okay. With that out of the way, let's actually go ahead and talk about the serum and the sweat and the electrolyte content that they have. We are going to loop back and talk about some of these mechanisms, the ADH and the aldosterone and the kidneys later. I just want to set that as kind of fundamental information for you to understand at this point.